Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome back to all the participants. So, participants, let's keep the agenda for today regarding the topic for Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, which wasn't covered. So, we will cover for today. So, we are aware of the deployment involving Azure, the Kubernetes service. So, what I will do is I look for the Kubernetes service on Azure Cloud Platform, and I'll look for Kubernetes, and you will find one Kubernetes service in Azure Cloud, which is part of Azure Kubernetes service called AKS. So in this current scenario, you get to see we don't have any Kubernetes service. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get started by creating a Kubernetes cluster. And get started by giving these details to provision the Kubernetes cluster. So Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, manages your hosted Kubernetes environment, making it quick and easy to deploy and manage container apps without any container orchestration expertise. Correct. So it does go ahead and take care of resources like provisioning, upgrading, and scaling the resources. Pretty much straightforward. Now, let's keep the ball rolling by giving the subscription and the resource group. And what is the cluster configuration that you want? You want a standard cluster configuration, which is going to meet the production grade clusters, or it's just for the purpose of testing. I'm trying to go and do a testing, or it's for our practice. So it's for testing. So I'll go and use a dev and test environment. So Kubernetes name, SSAD Cloud Azure K8 Kubernetes cluster, a name that I've given. Right. Region, it is expected to go ahead and hold a region. I'll go ahead and hold the region as US East 2. And availability zones at this moment, I will keep it as none. Because participants, what would happen? It will go ahead and also look out for extra compute resources. So I don't want to go ahead and spend resources spreading across all the zones and multiplying it. So in production case, we can spin up how many zones you want. Zone 1, 2, and 3 you can pick. At this moment, let's keep it as simple as possible because our aim is to go ahead and learn about the Kubernetes involving Azure, and we are focusing on the AKS part here. So now with this, I'll go ahead and continue. And here, participants, why I was mentioning, I'll tell you the reason also, because under free tier limit of Azure Cloud, you'll not be able to take the benefits because free tier will go ahead and restrict the usage of certain resources. And here the pool, the node pool in the sense, in EKS, we have seen node group where it combines what are the nodes. In the same way, we have nodes on which the cluster would be running. So it is asking me to consider the node size about standard V4 MS, which is 4 CPU and 16 GB of RAM. I think it is very, very costly. You can go and even change the size if it is something that you can accommodate. V2S should be sufficient. Yeah. And I want to go ahead and do an scaling from 1 machine to 5 in number. Instead of 5, I'll just keep it as 3. So I'll be having sufficient compute power to run this, even for the practice also. That's sufficient. From there, I will go ahead and continue to the node pool. So right now, we have considered a node pool. Right now, the node pool was the default agent pool that we have created, in which you guys can see how many nodes could be launched. So there will be totally a minimum of 1, and it can go up to maximum of 3. The size of each node will be 2 vCPU, 4 gigs of RAM. So no changes as of now. And we will continue regarding the access. We'll keep as default as possible. So there are 2 options that are available in Azure, where it will ask you, how do you want to handle the networking component of the Kubernetes cluster? The networking component of the Kubernetes cluster is primarily related to the idea of running an extra layer where you go ahead and build your own network, or you just go ahead and allow it to Kubernetes to have its own networking. So let's keep the networking to be handled by Kubernetes itself. So KubeNet will be used. If not, if you use Azure CNI, cloud networking interface, then you have to go ahead and handle the network at this moment, not required. Integrations, let's use Azure Active Directory to get started. And also we can use ACR, that is the container registry in Azure, like AWS ECR, Elastic Container Registry in AWS. So at this moment, we don't have any container registry. So let me hit a new one by creating a container registry called SSAD Cloud AZ ACR. That means Azure Container Registry. It's checking the availability. Yes, it is available for me to use. And let's go ahead and use. Now I have a container registry. Why we are required to use container registry? Because we will go ahead and store our images inside. Click advanced, infrastructure groups, review, and let's go ahead and do create. So let's check the validation at this moment. So participants, cool thing is now validation has been successful. We are able to launch the validation, and let's go ahead and create the Kubernetes cluster. The cluster would go ahead and create. Cluster is expected to get created. Yeah. Now cluster is on its way. So instead of awaiting for the cluster, now let's go ahead and follow the idea of what I was discussing in Kubernetes. So what I said, participants, if you remember Kubernetes from AWS, Kubernetes helps you to go ahead and run your container apps. Very straightforward definition. They'll help you to run a container. That means you are developing a container app. So also I said an important point is that when you go ahead and build container apps, those container apps are basically the images that you create that can be running in any of these Kubernetes environment in AWS, Azure, Google environment. So to demo that, what I will do, participants, is that I'll go back to AWS Cloud and let me connect to my EC2 instance to check whether I have those images still running in my environment. Now, what I will show you, you will be able to thoroughly understand now Docker and Kubernetes. So I'm just going back to, while this cluster gets created, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go back into my AWS account. And into this AWS account, I'm going to go ahead and take the root privileges and hit CD. And now I'm going to go ahead and ask, hey, Docker, do you have images in your environment? Clearly, participants, I can see that there are images that are running happily. And my app is still running. It's still there. Last 5 days ago, the one which we have created, 5 days ago, it's there. Okay, so participants, now what I'm going to do with this images now, I'm going to go ahead and do a Docker Hub login, which you can go ahead and start using it. So for that, so what I meant by hub.docker.com, the idea of hub.docker.com relates to ACR. It's exact copy of ACR, Azure Container Registry, ECR in AWS, Elastic Container Registry. Also, we have hub.docker.com. We can use Docker Hub images also. We can use Docker Hub. So it is available. If you type in hub.docker.com, you will get a page where you can go ahead and do a free registration. Using this free registration, you can go ahead and host your images there. Participants, are you with me, people? So this is similar to Azure Container in AWS, where you can host your images We have AWS ECR, where we can host our AWS images in AWS Container Registry involving ECR. So Docker, as part of their services, they also offer something called hub.docker.com. So you may put your images in any of these three. In Azure, you can put in Azure Container Registry, ACR, in ECR, Elastic Container Registry, ECR, Elastic Container Registry, in any of these. So currently, what I am trying to show you participants is that I have already installed Docker on my machine. Docker is already installed on my machine. After the Docker installation, we have already built our Docker images. We have built our Docker images. Now, what I want to show you participants, we have already hosted in our container registry. This is our container registry. ECR is still there. ECR container registry is still there. So what I want to show you participants is now is that I will go ahead and do a Docker login. I'll ask my username. I will do a login. Now I have successfully logged into my Docker account. Now what I will do is I will go ahead and create a repo in hub.docker.com. And I'll give a name called my repo, for example. The name of the repo is my repo, and it's a public repo. Just the name I mentioned as my repo. Now what I will do participants is that I will go ahead and store my images into my repo. So Docker, can you tag tag my app, the name that we have given, to SSAD cloud, my repo, the name that I've given. I wanted to tag the name as, now it has tagged successfully. Docker space images. Now there is a new repo, the name called SSAD cloud / my repo. So what I'll do now, I'll go ahead and say, Docker, can you go ahead and push this SSAD cloud / my repo? That means what is expected from this? What is expected from this Docker? Docker is expected to go ahead and push this image into this repo or into this container registry, the one which you can see here. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Very soon, we should be able to see an image getting uploaded. So participants, with the image successfully built on AWS cloud, I am pushing into container registry of Docker Hub, hub.docker.com. Now you can see a few seconds ago, 6:50, I have uploaded the latest image. Everyone, are you with me, people? Now, what I've done, I have successfully built a Docker image and pushed the Docker image into my hub.docker.com. Am I clear, everyone? Hello? Participants, am I clear now? Once again, I will repeat it for you. Our container registry, our Kubernetes cluster, named as Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, we have provisioned in Azure Cloud. So it is ready. Your deployment is ready. It's ready, participants. Now, to this deployment, we should have a Docker image or a container image. Now, what I said during our AWS EKS, you build Docker images at one place, right? You build a Docker image. Now we have built a Docker image at one place. 5 days ago, we have built that too in AWS Cloud. Now, I wanted to show you that the image is built in AWS Cloud. You can also run in Azure Cloud. That is my point. A Docker image that you build in AWS Cloud, the Kubernetes container image that you build in AWS Cloud, you can run in Azure Cloud. Why? Because images are portable. Kubernetes images, Docker images are portable. You can build anywhere, you can ship anywhere, you can run anywhere. That is what I'm trying to show you. So for this, there should be a hub, there should be a storage, there should be a container registry. And that container registry I'm using is hub.docker.com. Now with this, what you will be able to understand, with this, you should be able to understand that I can build in AWS cloud my Docker image, my container image, push it into container registry like ECR, Docker Hub, or Azure Container Registry, anywhere you can do, and pull that image anywhere you want. Now I want to pull this image into Azure cloud. So participants, shall we go ahead and do a deployment in Azure cloud? Shall we get started to do a deployment in Azure cloud? Shall we deploy in an Azure cloud, participants? Okay. Now for this, we need to go ahead and connect to that cluster. So let's click on this word called connect tab. It will show you the connection method. So connect to SSAD Cloud Kubernetes K8s cluster. Open the Cloud Shell. I'm opening the Cloud Shell. You'll ask me to go ahead and create a storage account. Let me go ahead and create a storage account because all these commands will go ahead and get against the storage. The commands, the kubectl commands will be installed. Participant, the good thing is all the Azure commands will be listed after you create the Kubernetes cluster. I don't need to give any commands. All the commands are available. See, I'm also able to do a login to those credentials with those credentials. The moment I click yes, it's already done. Now, it's time for me to go ahead and get started and play with this. So now what I will do, I will go ahead and run the sample commands. So I'll say, hey, can you get me the deployments? The same thing what we have done on that day of AWS EKS kubectl. Can you get me my deployments? Right now, I don't have any deployments, so I'm expected to get 0 deployments. Yeah, clearly no deployments. kubectl, can you get me my services? Get me my services. Clearly no services except the Kubernetes cluster. Kubernetes, can you get me my pods, PODS pods? Clearly no pods, nothing. Why? No deployment, no pods. No pods, no combination to go ahead and give you a service. Clearly nothing we have. So participants, now what I will do, I'll go back to my AWS cloud and I'll open up my deployment files.zip file, the one which I gave you for AWS AKS deployment. See how powerful is Kubernetes. So let's go back to our deployment. On that day, I gave you the Kubernetes KS deployment files.zip file. I am going to get that file. See, everything that we have used in AWS, I'm using on Azure. See the power of Kubernetes. I would like to get this file. Yeah, cool. I'm able to see there is a zip file. I would like to go ahead and unzip this file. Cool. There are 2 files in this deployment.yaml file. Participant, there is deployment.yaml file. Participant, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So there is a deployment.yaml file. There is a deployment.service file. What we have done for these files are from AWS. These files are not from Azure. These files from AWS. See, how will I use it? You just think, how will I use it? So I'll remove this zip file, r.zip file. So only service deployment file and YAML file will be available. Just a minute. Yeah, even if you're not sure, you can even open an editor. It will show you the deployment.yaml file. See the deployment.yaml file and a service file. So participants, the good thing is we have the deployment file. Now tell me participants, which image should I go and use now? Which image should I go and use now? We have a deployment.yaml file. So this one will remain the same. This one, no change. Metadata, just a naming convention, my app -deployment. The number of replicas are 2 in number. Labeling is my app is the name. Metadata, specification for the container and the image. Now, the only thing I will tell you what you have to do is know the change for the reference for this image. So tell me participants, which image should I go and change? What is the image should I go and use now? Come on, guys. I would be very much happy if you can answer this question. Line number 19, what image should I go and use? Participants, yes, it's your hub, Docker hub image we should be using, because that is what I've been using. SSAD cloud / my repo latest. That's the latest which I've built and kept in container registry called hub.docker.com. Is that clear, everyone, now? See, the common repository that is available for me, or the repository which I'm using for storing the container images, is now hub.docker.com. I build my images. See, I built my image, Docker image. I push that image into container registry. What is a container registry? My app container registry. And you can see here the name of the registry. Now, participants, what are we awaiting for? Nothing. We are just awaiting to do the deployment. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the deployment. Why did I close this? Open the Cloud Shell. Yes. So we have already the deployment files ready. Cloud deployment is ready. Service file is ready. No change except the image reference. I changed the image reference. Now say kubectl. Can you go ahead and apply the changes? Same commands. Apply -f my app -f my app -deployment.yml file. So it will go ahead and create a deployment for you. I'll make even more bigger the screen for you. Deployment is done. So kubectl, you can ask, can you get me my deployments? It will tell you that yes, there are few deployments yet to happen. That means deployments, yes, deployments are done. They are ready. Now, if they are ready, they should be ready with pods. Kubectl, get me the pods. Cool, the pods are running. Now, once the pods are running, the more advantage that we can take is we can make them together as part of a service. So for that, what we can do now, kubectl, can you go ahead and apply -f my app -service.yaml file. So a new service that I'll create. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and say kubectl. Can you get me my services, please? Yeah. Now it is working hard to build a load balancer, which it is. Yes, it has already built. Now I can see. I'm just awaiting for the IP address. Like we have seen the load balancer DNS, we also have the public IP address. There you go. We have the public IP. Let's go to it. Copy and port 8080 / my app. There you go. This was the same image that we have used in AWS Cloud. This image is coming as we have built this image in AWS Cloud. So participants, you can see this image is the image that I've used as part of 5 days ago. The image was built 5 days ago. The same image I deployed in Azure Cloud. So now relate, participant, try to relate. In AWS Cloud, we have built the Docker image. we have used in Azure Kubernetes cluster. If I build a Docker image in Azure Kubernetes cluster, then I can go ahead and use in AWS cloud. I'll go ahead and give you a visual interpretation of what I meant with this so that you will be very, very clear with this part. See, imagine there are two cloud providers like AWS cloud involving EKS cluster, and there is a Azure cloud. There's the Azure cloud, the other side involving AKS. Now, participants, if there was no Kubernetes, or then there would not be no EKS or AKS. Am I right, participants? Hello? If there was no AWS, if there was no Kubernetes, there was no EKS or AKS. Then what we have to do normally, we have to take the source code, we have to build it, test it, deploy it, and make images. Those images are very specific to AWS. What images we have in AWS called AMIs. We have AMIs in AWS. What images in Azure we call Azure images. Now a question to all of you, Azure images. Participants, can we use AMIs on Azure cloud? Can we use AMIs, Packer AMIs? Whatever Packer builds AMI, can we use in Azure?
No.
No, we can't use them. That is the point. We can't use them. Can I use Packer images built in Azure cloud on AWS? Can I use them? No, the answer is no, I can't use them. So in order to go ahead and bring flexibility across the cloud providers, we are not using Packer now, we are using Docker now. No Packer. We have adapted to Docker. What Docker is going to do? Docker is going to go ahead and bundle one single image, like the Tomcat that we had, the environment we had, Tomcat, plus the source code, the bundle, ion myapp.var package, whatever the var package we had, it has bundled together, and this bundle has turned into a Docker image. Now this image, the beauty of this image is this image, you can pull this image, this Docker image, you can pull on AWS cloud to run it on EKS cluster. This Docker image, you can pull and run it on AWS Azure cloud and run it on AKS. That is what exactly I have done now. I have built a Docker image in AWS cloud and uploaded into Docker Hub, hub.docker.com. You can see here I've uploaded a Docker Hub. And from there, Docker Hub, I deployed into Azure cloud. Can I have a quick round of confirmation now, participants? See the power of a Docker image. This image is now available as a public image. You can pull it. Now, the good thing is even you can pull this image now. If you are having container registry or if you are having Kubernetes cluster with you, this is a public image. Everybody can go ahead and pull this. Anybody can go ahead and pull this. Just need to run the command docker pull SSAD cloud. If you pull this, it will be pulled at your cluster level. It will be pulled saying Docker pull this image, Docker run this, it will run. Same way, I have pulled it onto my Kubernetes cluster and I ran it on my Kubernetes cluster in EK. So participants, how pipelines are done is the same way. We expect that developer will write the code, Docker file will be given to the developer code, taking the Docker file. If you want, I'll show you the source code also. I've already github.com. Okay. It's https github.com/azonecloud. So in this Azone cloud, I had this repository, beta repository, not alpha repository, I guess, beta repository, and the Docker file was given. So the source code was turned, this similar source code was turned into a Docker image, and we were able to go ahead and build the Docker file, and we're able to build the Docker image. You want, I'll show you that source code also. Yeah, see here the beta source code, cd to beta. In that beta, ls-al source, cd to source, unls, cd to main, web app, unls, index.jsp, nano, index.jsp. See that participants, hello world. We have able to hello world. Welcome to AWS Cloud CI/CD. Welcome to Docker and Kubernetes. This is Docker. So participants, now you are able to understand the power of Kubernetes, everyone. And participants, one more important point when you want to do a practice, especially in Azure Kubernetes service, you will face limitations with regards to sizes. So if you are able to accommodate the sizes, please, I would request you to do a practice. If not, just visit this recording one more time to understand this session, because you will not be able to go ahead and provision if the sizes are not supported in that region. So now coming back to the deprovisioning of the resources, you can go ahead and go to your resources, all resources at one place. You'll get plenty of resources. See, plenty of Kubernetes resources. So you can go ahead and see how many resources, public IP, network security group, crowd tables. These are all the resources created by Azure Cloud. So you can just go ahead and select them and drop them together. Yeah. Participants, do you have any questions for me, please? Do you have any questions for me? Participants, do you have any questions for me? And participants, you can use the same documentation that I've given you for AWS, because the same commands are available. The same commands have run. kubectl get deployments, kubectl get pods, kubectl get nodes, kubectl namespaces, kubectl get services. And this is what exactly I've given you. And I've used the exact deployment files also. Same deployment file I've used. Whatever that I've been using are the same deployment files. No change in the deployment. That's what one deployment file I've used for AWS and Azure. One documentation for AWS and Azure. Kubernetes, that's the power of Kubernetes. And one image for both of these clusters. Yep. Participants, do you have any questions for me?